Well, one of the positives out of the weekend is we stayed pretty healthy. Actually, last week kind of had a little viral flu and just, I think, natural progression of the seasons run through our team. Had a number of guys miss a little bit of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practices. Didn't have anybody new rise up on Saturday, but definitely had that popping through our building. And then overall, I thought, other than Josh McCray actually had a pre-existing injury from the first game that was causing him a little bit of, he was just a little banged up, wasn't 100%, and then he was actually one of those guys that I believe Thursday and Friday was affected with a pretty high temperature, chills, body ache, so a guy that just wasn't quite himself. That's why he didn't play the amount of reps. But other than that, going into this Saturday's game, probably for the first time this season, no really additional injuries from Saturday's games that were any of significance. So that's a positive. I do like the response that our guys gave us on Sunday. We're a little bit different today, but the NCAA student board really had, over the last couple of years, had a big voice in college football, college athletics in general. So one of the new parameters is Tuesday being an election day. We can't touch our student athletes, some schools had filed waivers, but as soon as I talked to our Illini council, it was very apparent that I would say the majority of our team had a voice that wanted to stay with Tuesday being a day that we didn't have any practice. So we'll actually practice tonight under the lights, which is a little bit different for us to accelerate our on the field practice time. But that means that we don't get them on Tuesday. So we'll practice this evening, have tomorrow off. Practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday travel to Minnesota and play in the Big Ten West, leading a team right now. Minnesota is a 4-1 football team in the West, 6-2 overall, have won 4 straight, and have played really, really well. I think offensively they monopolize the clock. They run the ball effectively. Their quarterback is a very accurate passer. A lot of their runs feed into their play action game, RPO business. Defensively, they've stopped the run very effectively in our conference. They're one of the few teams in the country, I think one of only one team in Power 5 that is both in the top 15 rush offense and rush defense. So I think that's a very significant factor in the menu that they win games with. In the play up there will be another Big Ten game that I think we've actually fared fairly well when we've gone on the road outside of the Virginia game, but in Big Ten play we played well on the road. So I'm excited to get our crew and get on the road and see where we're at for this coming Saturday. So with that, open up for questions.
Bret, your offense has 3 points in the first quarter so far this season. What issues are you seeing there? How you got to address that?
We've actually got 5 total points as a team. I'm going to try to slide in every point that I can, right? So we had a safety by our punter, but you're right, our offense has 3 in the first quarter, which is absolutely as bad as it gets. So huge emphasis the last several weeks on trying to score early. I think it's an obstacle that we've been trying to work our way through, just haven't been able to overcome it. But offensively, I did think a positive out of Saturday's game was just the play of BP. By far was the best productive game that I've been with them. During my time with him here at the University of Illinois, I thought he threw the ball. I thought he was confident. Obviously, the big play to Isaiah, but also just there was an in-breaking route with DJ, the screen pass to DJ, some of the other things that he capitalized on. Even the 2-minute, we really looked like he had a great composure, great confidence. I saw him more animated during the course of the week, and I definitely saw it after the game, that he was visibly frustrated and upset. So I think those are positive steps in the right direction. So I think we have to take that and move forward to offensively know that BP's our starting quarterback all week, and in that mode of having last week's preparation to carry into this week's preparation is definitely a step in the right direction. But our first quarter offensive woes in general have been a major hurdle for us all year.
And obviously your defense has made huge strides this year, Bret. Offense, the numbers not as good. What can you guys, as a staff, understanding it's year one, what can you do to get more out of it?
Well, I think, first off, look at what I do as a head coach. And as head coaches, everything runs downhill from there, right? So to Tony and the offensive staff, I think have really been trying to concentrate on the things that we do well, try to minimize the things we don't do well. Even though it's been the same 2 guys, we've kind of been in and out of the lineup with the same quarterback. So a little continuity there, I think, helps us in a big way. Having confidence in the group of players around him, I think as a play caller, you obviously, it starts with a quarterback, but in our scheme and our system, to have confidence in the running game, and even though one of the two has been there for the majority of the season, there's been quite a few games, and this past Saturday being one of them, where one of the two guys wasn't there, right? And I get it, it's Big Ten play, but I don't know if I've ever, in my entire 13 years as a head coach, I've ever had this much fluctuation in my starters, offense, defense, whether it's guys I've lost, by far the most I've ever lost for an entire season, but also just kind of week to week, guys in and out of the lineup based on injury. So it's been frustrating, but it's not an excuse. It's just part of the reason why you have to work your way through it and come up with the best plan that gives us an opportunity to have success. I think our guys play their best when we're running the football, and we can get creative around that. But that's a major challenge for us for sure.
Well, you mentioned sort of next man up in a lot of those situations where you've had fluctuation, but what's the challenge where it's not maybe the same group, even quarter to quarter sometimes?
Yeah, I think from a offense, if we're still talking offense,
Sure.
Offensively, just to build the identity around what we want to do and how we want to do things. The personnel groupings, we started off at the beginning of the year was kind of more of 11, a little bit more 12, then the emergence of 12 came into it. Now we've had some more 21. We had some larger groupings have success. So settling in on who your best 11 players are and try to maximize them. I think as a head coach, I've always tried to, drive the play calling towards your better players, right, and put them in positions to have success. So whether it's, X number of touches in the run game, I think of a couple of our running backs, including Shikari, though our top three, those guys not only run the ball effectively, they also have some pretty good hands. So to use them, incorporate them as much as we can in the throw game. And then obviously offensively, we've had a little bit of a mainstay here, probably the last 5 or 6 games. But even this is only our second game. We're switching Palcho and Julian Pearl. Was significant. That penalty at the end of the game with Julian was the first time that he'd run that play at tackle. So there was some learning curves there. So I just think there's a variety of different things that we're working our way through. Not excuses; they're just reasons that we have to get better at and try to maximize our practice time.
Brett, it seemed like early on you were trying to get a whole bunch of wide receivers out there, for certain snaps, and I'm curious if throughout practice you and George have seen that group continue to escalate their play, and so you wouldn't be putting them out there if you didn't think they'd be in the game.
I think by far the competitive three that just majority of snaps,
Sure.
Isaiah, Casey, and Donnie, but obviously Deuce brings a skill set that you want to see out there. We've began to work after his shoulder injury to try and get Hightower out there as much as we possibly can. Miles Scott is a guy that has been very impressive over the last half of the season here. A true freshman has come in and done a really nice job in that regards. And then you got like Devion Campbell, Carlos Sandy, guys that we're trying to incorporate and get out there. A little bit of that has to do with the familiarity between them and the quarterbacks as well. So I like the fact that the more comfort level BP has with those guys, the better he'll feel, throwing the ball and making decisions. So, I thought we're trying to maximize our roster as best we can and find out who can help us win.
You mentioned Brian had a shoulder injury at Hightower. What's his availability? Has there been any consistent stretches of availability for him?
I would say I don't know what game we got him back, but there, since that point. But then there was a little soft tissue that flared up that he missed some practice time that affected what the ability was to prepare for the game. But Hightower has been an awesome, as far as just energy, excitement, enthusiasm. I think he wants to be out there. We know we want him out there. But also, again, once you get into the season, Isaiah's probably playing as good a football as he's played. Casey's playing as well as he's played. Donnie's always been a pretty consistent guy. So those three guys are going to take a majority of the reps. And now your 4th, 5th, 6th wide receiver, those guys may take anywhere from 5 to 15 snaps, depending on how much the personnel calls for it. So it's hard to kind of move them into those spots once the game gets rolling.
You mentioned playing well on the road, or maybe the converse, and not as well at home. Anything you've identified behind that?
Again, it's really home and away. I just mentioned that it's been my experience a lot of times a team when it takes the road is a little bit different personality, and ours has been a positive one. It has been a negative one. I think we really looked at after that Virginia game about how we wanted to play the game and how we wanted to approach things. So that's been there. I would say the thing that consistently has been a little bit of an issue is just playing a 4-quarter game, right? Being consistent when obviously, no pun intended for the Penn State, was 4 quarters and beyond, right? But it's just been every one of these, especially the close games. I know a lot has been, talked about 4 games that, within a score of winning it. And a lot of those games have been 50, 55, 58 minutes of good football for us, or football that can hopefully put you in a winning position, but we can't put ourselves over the top in the most critical moment. I look at Saturday, and I know I said it after the game, right? I always talk about penalties, mental errors, and turnovers. Well, we had no turnovers, right? We had the lowest amount of mental errors offensively that we've had the entire year. We only had 3 penalties, but those 3 penalties came at critical moments. So it is about those in quantity, but it's really about when they occur, right? So I pointed out to our crew on Sunday, the one time we did turn the ball over was near the boundary over there. It was play 15 of our offensive, just total number of plays. I just remember because it popped in my head. Play 15 was a play they knocked the ball out from Chase, and they tried to dive on the ball, but the ball was out of bounds. They touched it out of bounds, which made it stay in our possession. But there was definitely a fumble there. And then 4 plays later was the post route to Isaiah, right? So we all know how that drive ended, which was very positive. But if we hadn't recovered that ball, obviously that script would have never turned out the way that it did, and would have had a huge effect on the game in general. So it's not really when it happens; it's a critical moment. If it happens, it's when it happens that has been our biggest downfall.
Brett, with Brandon and that confidence, is he somebody who responds well or gets more confidence kind of knowing that was going to be his job last week?
I get the question, but he's, I've been very clear. One thing that I think if you interviewed all of our quarterbacks, that I'm very clear by Monday of any game of this week, they knew who was going to be the quarterback. So what I did going into last week that I told BP, I said, hey, no one would have ever laid out your 6th year to be this way, right? First, to have a 6th year, to have it labeled as you're the starter going into the year, to get knocked out early in the Nebraska game, to come back in, to have Art, basically get the start in his opportunity, and then to have Art get knocked out and put him back in the lineup and inserted him in the middle of the game is really very unique. And then to sit there 4 games out from the finality of your college football season, I said, if you want to play and continue to even think about playing beyond here, this is it, right? Like, you either got to do it or it's not going to get done, right? So let's let it all hang out. And I just thought his demeanor, his approach, even Friday walkthrough, I just sensed a lot more skill set of just communicating, processing, understanding. I grabbed Bart Miller after the walkthrough on Friday, and he talked about how much more engaged he was in the Friday blitz pickup drill. There was a lot of positives, and I think Isaiah and him, obviously everybody understands the significance of that throw, right? Like that was a big deal in our program to see that manifest on Saturday. So believe me, I get it. 3-6 isn't anywhere where I want to be, but there are so many things that begin to happen around us that is a very positive thing. We're just going to keep building on those. We're going to try to, get past the bumps in the road that we're searching. I know this is a huge month, right? The month of November. I remember my first 2 championship seasons. The first one, there was no Big Ten playoff game, so we had won at Ohio State at our place against number 1. We went on the road and beat Iowa. We had 4 games left in front of us that I felt were winnable games. If we win them, I knew we had a championship. So I literally laid out the month of November calendar, and we made a kid check every day the month of November, right? If you try to jump to the end of it, we'd never get there. The next year, to get to a Big Ten championship game, you had to process the end of the season to get the opportunity to play against Michigan State, a team that we lost to earlier. So I told our guys the other day, listen, we may not be in the quest for a Big Ten West championship right now, but at some point we will. You have to understand November is the ones you're going to remember, and this is when games need to be won in a big way. So our November isn't where I want it to be, but it's very significant, right? Like, I know that transfer portal things are going to start coming up in our program just because they're happening in other programs. I know that we're not oblivious to that. I understand that, during our bye week with 2 remaining games left, there's going to be conversations with guys that, are moving on from our program because they're 6-year seniors, but then because of the COVID world, it's a whole different world out there right now with players and what eligibility, if they want to play football or how they want to go about it. Had a number of players, freshmen that have come in and do some really good things and talk about the growth that they are. So it's going to be a big 3 weeks, 3 games, but really 4 weeks because of the bye week.
Coach, you mentioned Brandon being a little bit more confident in practice and doing different things. He said the same thing after the game on Saturday.
He said the same thing? Or I said?
Brandon did.
Oh, okay.
After the game on Saturday. What can you guys do to continue to build that confidence this week in practice before going up to Minnesota?
It's probably just like anybody else, right? Like, I'm sure the first time you wrote an article and you felt good about it, you felt how much better writing the next one, right? I mean, like, as people, when you have success and you feel it and it's tangible, you want it, you seek it, you want to do it again. And I think if he had failure or had setbacks, even there at the end, right? I mean, obviously the game ended with the ball in our hands, but he did a really good job of processing that moment and getting it. And that's really been his most effective 2-minute type situation since we've been together. So there was, again, not anywhere close. We don't want to end in defeat. And Rutgers earned it. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I just think we could handle a few things better on Saturday in the right moments, offense, defense, and special teams, and we could come out on top of that. And that's the process we're in.
But on that last drive, you said Chase, kind of tapped his head.
Mm-hmm.
But for understanding that you still had a chance to get it 3 and out and use your 3 timeouts.
Yeah.
Was there a thought to let's call one to get one of our better offensive players, just a Bret to get him in on that 3rd down play? Or how do you approach those late game situations?
Well, the 3rd down play came without. Yeah, we were going no huddle. Like, I didn't know. Okay. You were on the backside of that. We were at a minute 8, I think, right, or something like that, with where we're at on the clock. So. It was under a minute 20, I know that. And I knew if we didn't get a first down early in that drive, I said, hey, we got 3 timeouts. If we haven't used one, I at least have the opportunity to get the ball back. So I knew that going into it. We started off with a run, then it converted to a run. We threw 1 pass in there, and we were having success running the football. And really that 3rd down play to get one of our better offensive players, I understand what you're saying, but I consider Ja'Cory Norwood one of our better offensive players. Like, if a lot has been written about, Josh and Chase, but Ja'Cory Norwood has done a lot of good things and probably grown as much in that running back room as much as anybody from here to there. So, no, I didn't want to take a timeout to sub in on a 3rd and 3. And honestly, the play was blocked up pretty well. We had a tackle go over the top that could have made that 4th down play. I didn't exactly love the spot, to be quite honest. Which have factored into your 4th down decision. But when they called timeout on the 4th down, we went into that timeout, and I'm just ahead of the game saying to myself, if we don't get this, right, I still have 3 timeouts, which, obviously didn't play out because they converted on that 3rd down, but I wouldn't change anything about the way we kind of handled that moment any different. And Ja'Cory was straining every inch to get what he needed to get.
How'd you feel about that last sequence of plays, the 4 down? Obviously it didn't work, but in hindsight.
Yeah, obviously when we're getting ready to play these guys, so the defense coordinator and I have been together for 2 years. So as soon as I saw us line up and they kind of shifted people at the last minute, I knew what they were doing. And then obviously it got down to an execution on that last play in a one-on-one. I'd take Chase 100 times over. I did feel we were going in a different direction. Then when I saw the reality of the spot, the official moved the ball back about 3 more feet than he originally spotted the ball at. So we had gone a quarterback sneak earlier in the game. So when it went from 4th, in my opinion, was going to be inches to now 4th and about a long yard and a half, it dramatically changed the way that you thought about that play.
Minnesota's had a lot of running back injuries, yet they continue to run the ball. I'm guessing that's a lot to do with their offensive line. What's the challenge of that offense for you?
Yeah, it was even going back to last spring. Someone had put forward me an article that I think when PJ had taken over Minnesota that first spring, they basically did endless numbers of periods of Skelly because they didn't have any linemen. And I think he put an emphasis on offensive line play at that time. And I just know the way that we recruit, we butt up against them quite a bit. They've had 3 productive running backs that have kind of been injured throughout. Never want to see that, but the results of the way they've been able to run the football have stayed pretty consistent, especially these last 3 games. And I give a lot of credit to their offensive just mentality, right? Doesn't matter who's back there. I think their offensive line are big physical guys that cover you up and move the football. They use their tight ends. They have a 12 jumbo package, which is really just one person away from a barge type of concept. Their quarterback, I think, really fits well with what they've done in the run game. He understands it, sees it. He's a very accurate passer. They actually have another quarterback that comes in and does some wildcat stuff. So, again, I think a key ingredient, I always look at why do teams win, right? And one of the key things that jumped out to me was, they're one of the only Power 5 teams to be in the top 15 in rush offense and rush defense. That says something to me. That's not a very common trait. So that's something that jumps out pretty good.
Coach, the third down conversions on defense continue to improve. I think it's down to 37%. Fourth down is 8 for 9, 89%. Is there anything to read into that? Anything you work on in practice on fourth down defense? Is there anything to that?
Robert, so like fourth down, usually comes in 2 different capacities, like a 4th and short, like 4th and 1, or, like what we had. And then it's really kind of, I believe that last one was almost a 4th and 8, if I'm not mistaken. 4th, and it was a little bit longer with a backup quarterback who came in and delivered one, on strike, on point. They were 3 for 3 on 4th downs, which ended up being a big tail in the game. And in other games that we've lost closely like that, that's been a part of it. So I think one of the things I've really loved about working with Ryan is watching him continue to grow and learn and understand our players. As a head coach, I've never really been a guy that steps into the moment. We had some nice discussions today because we're game plan meeting, but during the course of the game, I think the ability to capitalize on 4th down for us defensively has not maybe been where we want it to be, but I'm not seeing anything schematically or overly concerning about what we're doing. Just they went out and executed. I thought Greg did a really good job of executing his game plan, and on 4th down, their quarterback made some plays, and it was a variety of quarterbacks that did that.
For clarity, you said you didn't love the spot. Do you have any recourse in a situation?
Yeah, I can challenge, but then if I don't win the challenge,
Timeout's
timeout's gone. It's kind of like a wasted timeout, So there was actually one in the middle of the 2nd quarter that actually might have been 3rd quarter. Casey Washington caught a little in route about the 30-yard line, and they spotted it. I thought he caught the ball on the yard line, which would have been a 1st down. But it was my first time with that crew, right? So I'd never, the white hat, I'd never worked with him. He's been a guy that's been in a while. That crew actually had two weeks off this year, right? So they had never worked with us, and I was just trying to get a feel for them. There was a couple things we had discussions about. I didn't like a 12 on the field that I thought was a critical moment. I thought the first challenge was one that they arrived at a decision. I'm not arguing with the call. It's just like that very first play. That's the first play of a game. I challenged that. I called timeout because they didn't review it, and then kind of a standard cover a little bit a lot of times is, we got buzzed when he got hit. I go, I got you. So there's a little bit of me continuing to grow with the officials in this league and understand where sometimes mechanics are a little bit different. And it's part of just the learning process for all of us.
Bret, can you give us any insight, win or lose, on Saturday, how you're able to maybe read the temperature of the room come Sunday and how critical that is to kind of get you guys, as a staff, going, okay, these guys are locked into where they need to be, or like we're focusing too much on what happened yesterday? Yeah,
it's probably a fun thing to think about and write about, but it's really, I think in the locker room you get a feel for what your kids are. The senior leadership, I might hit up guys individually, like, hey, how you feeling? What do you got? There's different things that come into effect. Like I know certain guys really take to heart, those losses, especially if they feel that they might have had an effect on it, and you got to get them out of that and move them past. Sunday, because we had this Monday coming in front of us, I was able to kind of take yesterday as a day, hey, we got to flip forward fast, right? You don't have Monday to sit around and think about it. This is the team that we have. This is what's in front of us. This is how we want to play. I told our coaches specifically, like, listen, hey, you need to own what you coach and what you taught, but also make sure that we get it the way we want it, right? So for us to get eventually to where we want to be, we can't settle in the way that we approach things now. And sometimes those are difficult. I think the week before I came in here and said it's a little bit easier to correct after a win. I think that's 100% true. But on the same account, you got kids that are wired that they want success every way of every play of every day, and you can kind of come at those guys a little bit different. I think in general, I always lead by I have to be the example when I walk in the room for my coaches and my players. And then, from a roster standpoint, I always use the 80-20 rule. If you got 80% of them doing what you want them to do, the other 20% will follow. If you got 80% doing what you don't want them to do, that 20% will follow them too, right? So as we continue to build and develop our roster and work with the guys, I can't tell you the amount of excitement I have with a lot of our younger players in the building that I've just seen continue to move and develop. And it may seem like a simple thing to you, but like to watch Johnny Newton and Keith last week at the radio show, like these guys go to work every day, but then to see them have fun, that's how I'm wired. This week, case in point, right? PJ and I, for you guys that know each other, are probably completely different people. But when I hear and see and watch his teams play, I have a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for what he teaches and what he coaches. They run the ball effectively and stop the run effectively. And when I started watching film last spring about special game situations, Minnesota is very, very good at game situations, which doesn't happen by chance. Their defensive coordinator is a guy that I've known for a long time, and what he's done and what he's able to accomplish. So have a lot of respect for what goes on there.
Speaking of the radio show.
What's that?
Speaking of the radio show, this is Brian's 20th year as voice of the Illini. What's it like to work with him?
He's just old. It's 20th year of Ryan. He's got me beat by 19. So he just is a guy that seems to enjoy and appreciate the Illini, right? But also the job that he gets to do on a daily basis. I've said it now several times. Like the part about college football is being around people that you love to work with, and he's just another great example of it.